Right. Well, this sucks. I have a wastewater leak that I thought I had fixed in late fall, and I was going to start repairing the walls and found out that it is leaking again. You can see that there's moisture there sucking up into that mortar I just put down, and there's moisture on the pipe, and it's all wet down here. And when I had this fixed, or thought I had it fixed, it was all bone dry. The wall you see here is located in our laundry kitchen room. I know it looks terrible. I had to remove a bunch of plaster and mortar that was peeling away due to a persistent water leak that exists somewhere behind this wall. I also had to gouge out a hole to get access to the access port, which goes into the wastewater pipe that runs behind this wall. The leak has been here for decades, but has gotten worse since we moved in. The green you see there, that is not paint, that is algae. When you look at the water damage on the wall, you see it gets about to this point and then it gets clear. So the leak is probably somewhere between my finger and the first floor bathroom. The challenge is the leak may be starting somewhere up here, running in this cavity that the pipe is sitting in and actually hitting the wall at some point down here. So it's hard to tell at this point between the first floor and this point here where that leak actually may exist. So this is a tool I'm going to try to identify where the leak is. It's called an endoscope. Basically has a camera with a light on the end, and anywhere you point it shows up on the screen here. So the idea is I'm going to drive this along the length of the pipe in the cavity and see if I can identify where the leak is. Then I have to figure out how to fix it. Sounds great in theory. Bingo! Using my endoscope, I was able to identify a coupler or an Überschiebmuffe about halfway up the pipe that's connecting two sections. And as you can see, at the bottom section of that coupler is where my leak is. So either the seal has failed, or the pipe was not properly seated into the Überschiebmuffe, or both. It looks pretty disgusting. So even though the endoscope gave me some idea of where the leak was, I still need to determine the exact location of that coupler where I suspected the leak was happening. So using the length of the endoscope and some educated guessing, I drilled these exploratory holes until I actually found where the coupler was located, and I could verify that the water was leaking out of the bottom of the seam as I suspected, and then any fix I implemented would actually fix that. In order to fix this leak without having to replace this entire length of gray pipe, which would have meant jackhammering a huge hole in the wall in order to remove and replace the pipe and coupler, I took a different route. What I did is I took this pipe with both hands and I shoved it as hard as I could into the coupler above. I then locked it down with basically a pipe clamp. Since then, there's been no moisture or leakage at all, and this has gone through some heavy usage. It's been in place for about a month, so I think I've got the problem resolved. Step one is I'm going to have to remove these two cabinets and expose those holes that I drilled here that showed the coupler. And then I'm going to have to do what I was really trying to avoid is blast a bigger hole in there to expose that whole coupler so I can figure out how to get it out and replace it. With a little bit of effort, I finally got those cabinets off and exposed that discovery hole that I made back in late fall. Now I need to make a bigger hole all the way through this wall to expose that connector. I did that previously with a hand and chisel here. It was laborious, tedious, and just the wrong way to do it. So I got smart this time. It's called a bore hammer. And it'll pound right through this brick and stone and expose that coupler. Then I can figure out what my next step's going to be. I'm about halfway done with the hole, and you can now see where that leak is in the coupler. That's the bottom of it. That brown stuff is just raw sewage, along with a combination of all sorts of other gunk that's rolled out of these pipes for decades. So I need to take care of this upper portion to expose the whole coupler. But if you look at the sides and how thick that wall is, this would have taken me days if I tried to use a hammer and chisel. So this is why the bore hammer is a must-have for dealing with walls like this. All right, so the hole is complete, and I've totally exposed that coupler. As you can see from the bottom, that's where all the moisture is. That's where all the obvious evidence of leakage. And on the top, there looks like there might have been some leak at some point, but it is bone dry. And I've flushed the toilet a couple times upstairs to make sure, and nothing's happening up here. It's all happening right there. So, what to do next? The way these connectors work is they connect two sections of pipe and they have seals in the top and bottom. And normally this wouldn't be an issue and water would just cascade down freely. However, if the seal on the bottom fails or the pipe was not properly inserted and or slides down, then water will find its way outside the pipe. And that's the situation we have now. In a perfect world, we'd have something like this, where one pipe slides into the opening of the other. Therefore, if the seal fails or the pipe slides down a little bit, water cannot find gravity to come back up through the seal and find its way on the outside of the pipe. However, given the constrained space we have to deal with, I don't think this is going to be an option. So what happened here? For the life of me, I could not get this connector to move. I tried and tried, and I was afraid I was going to disconnect the pipe from above, or worse, break it and make a bad situation worse. So I called in professional help. And the plumber, as you can see, was able to move the coupler, which it was at that point, he moved it down a good 6 centimeters. Now, it took him half an hour to get that to move, but by moving it down, it created a firmer seal on the bottom pipe. So that bottom pipe had never really been properly seated in the coupler in the first place. And over time, it slid down a little bit, which just exasperated the problem. Why they did that, how that occurred, who knows. But right now, there's no leakage at all. We've tested it. We ran the shower for 15 to 20 minutes, and it seems to be holding. So I'm going to keep an eye on it for the next couple weeks. In the meantime, I'm going to have to leave all of this open. I need this all to dry out, and it's probably going to take a couple weeks to a month. Once I'm sure the leak is fixed, then I'm going to create a plug here out of styrofoam and plaster as opposed to brick and mortar. If I have to get back in here, it's a lot easier to move the plaster and styrofoam than trying to pound some more brick and mortar. Then, once these walls are absolutely dry, I can begin the process of repairing them, which was the original intent all along. Such is castle life.